You're watching the Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some breaking news in Trump's criminal case down in Florida regarding his illegal retention of classified documents. One of his former employees, who's referred to in the indictment as Trump Employee 5, he is now speaking out and has broken from Trump's legal team. So, first off, what's the significance of this?
It looks like this character, Brian Butler, who has been in Donald Trump's orbit for literally decades, 20 years now, and seems to be very closely associated with all three of the people who are indicted in the Florida case. That would be Donald Trump, Walt Nauta, and Carlos de Oliveira. In fact, he was best friends with Carlos de Oliveira, which I think will become important when and if Brian Butler is called as a witness at the Florida trial. But, one of the things that we've learned from this brand new CNN reporting is Brian Butler has been cooperating with federal authorities for a very long time. There's reference to multiple interviews with the feds. I believe he testified before the grand jury, perhaps multiple times. And the reporting makes clear that Brian Butler is somebody who was never willing to take an attorney from Trump world to represent him. In other words, to hold him close the way Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira have been held close, right? So it looks like he has been providing information for a very long time that sounds really damning of Donald Trump and the other two co-conspirators. So some of the most, I think, interesting and potentially damaging information that we're learning is that I believe it was on June 2nd, 2020, at the same time, Donald Trump was flying to Washington, D.C., together with his lawyers to meet with federal prosecutors. Brian Butler has revealed that he was helping load box after box after box of what he now believes to be classified documents onto Trump's plane that could be taken to New Jersey, to his golf club in Bedminster. So, Brian, we've kind of known all along that there were potentially classified documents that were taken from Mar-a-Lago and transferred up to New Jersey, to Bedminster. But this sort of confirms that, and the timing couldn't be more nefarious, right? When Donald Trump and his lawyers are meeting with federal prosecutors, presumably trying to talk them out of indicting Donald Trump for the classified documents and obstruction of justice crimes, he's whisking away. I believe
He's literally obstructing justice.
Yeah, right. At the same time, he's multitasking is what he's doing. And the reporting, according to Brian Butler, is that there were some like 10 or 15 boxes, the white bankers boxes that we've heard so much about, where Donald Trump is ferreting them away to New Jersey. And here's the thing, Brian, remember, it was 3 months later, August of 2022, that the FBI got that search warrant and got buku boxes, lots and lots of boxes with classified documents that Donald Trump had refused to give over previously. So now I think we have a pretty concrete picture here. Donald Trump took 10, 15 boxes from Mar-a-Lago to New Jersey, to his golf club, long before the FBI got that warrant and collected up as much of the classified material Donald Trump still had down at Mar-a-Lago. So my question has always been, and this has been a curiosity to me, why in the world was there never a search warrant conducted at Bedminster in New Jersey for what we now know were additional classified documents that Donald Trump was playing hide and seek with?
Glenn, people are going to see this, and the first word that's going to come to mind here is a flip. Is it possible that we're seeing a flip here?
I don't know that I would call this a flip. And here's why. Flip is kind of a term of art. What does it mean? It means that somebody who's got some criminal exposure, right? Maybe a co-conspirator who was in on Donald Trump's conspiracy to unlawfully retain these classified documents. Somebody with criminal exposure has decided to basically cut their losses. They've decided to take responsibility for their own crimes and flip against the others. Ordinarily, what happens is that person will plead guilty. That person will enter into a formal cooperation agreement that requires them to testify truthfully in the grand jury and at trial involving anybody else, that they have information about, anybody else they know has committed crimes. That's what what a flip is. That's what, when somebody becomes a cooperating witness, This doesn't feel like that. The reason I say that is because Brian Butler made clear in this extensive interview he gave to CNN that he didn't know what was in the boxes in June of 2022 when he was asked to just help load them onto Trump's plane. He said now he knows, but most importantly, he said he's had his own counsel all along. He wouldn't get an attorney from Trump world. So presumably he's been getting good advice all along. And that's probably why he has been cooperating with the authorities all along. There's no indication in the reporting that he had criminal exposure, and flipped, the indication in the reporting, though it's not completely spelled out, is that he's been cooperating from day one, presumably because in part he didn't have any criminal exposure. And it's interesting because Brian Butler now says, I wanted to come forward. I wanted to make my story public. He was referred to as Attorney 5 in the Trump indictment down in Florida, because people are saying this is a witch hunt, and it's not. And I wanted people to have accurate information about how the crimes that are charged against Donald Trump in that Florida federal indictment are based on evidence. And I know about some of that evidence because I lived it and I experienced it.
Okay, so I guess that raises the question, what kind of damage can he do to Trump?
Sounds like he can do a lot of damage to Trump and damage to the other co-defendants, De Oliveira and Nauta. So the article reports that he and De Oliveira were best friends, and it becomes clear as you're reading the reporting that Brian Butler knew and was communicating with De Oliveira about the fact that things weren't right. There were discussions about how they wanted to delete surveillance tapes, but at one point somebody tried to placate Brian Butler and said, but we'll keep recording somewhere else, but we're going to delete the recordings of this now. I mean, the sense that you get there is they're just trying to desperately cover their tracks, and there really is no sort of cohesive plan that they have. It's just that they're trying to do away with all of the evidence that they can before all of this comes home to roost, and it falls into the hands of the federal law enforcement agents. So it really feels like Brian Butler can do a whole bunch of damage, not only to Trump, but to De Oliveira and Walt Nauta. And those are the three co-defendants who are presently charged in the Florida case.
Glenn, what's the significance of the fact that Butler retained his own counsel and didn't kind of glom on to the existing Trump orbit legal team?
Yeah, we have seen this movie before, haven't we? When witnesses or people who might even be complicit in the crimes of Donald Trump originally are represented by Trump world attorneys. And what do they do? Well, they lie, they cover up, they conceal, they hold everything close. It's much like a mafia organization where you don't flip on the boss and we're going to get you a lawyer to make sure you remain loyal. The person that comes to mind when I first read this reporting is Cassidy Hutchinson. If you'll recall, and that was one of Mark Meadows' close assistants and aides. She at first was provided a Trump lawyer, and she started to lie. She kind of fell in line. She wasn't telling the January 6th House Select Committee the full truth as she knew it about Trump, Meadows, and others. She finally got an unconflicted lawyer, somebody who was looking out for her legal interests, not Trump's legal interests. And she began to tell the truth. She has become something of a hero now because she has laid bare some of what was going on in the White House, including Trump, Meadows, and others on and around January 6th. Here we have Brian Butler, who said, you know what? I don't want to be represented by a Trump world lawyer. I'm going to get my own independent conflict-free counsel. And that is probably why he's been cooperating with federal law enforcement authorities all along. You may remember there was also reporting about somebody else in Trump world, somebody else who worked at Mar-a-Lago, who originally went into the grand jury and lied to try to cover up some of Donald Trump's crimes. He had a Trump world lawyer at the time. And then there was a battle fought by Jack Smith trying to get that individual conflict-free counsel. The chief judge in D.C. ordered that he was entitled to conflict-free counsel. And once he got that conflict-free counsel, he said, I want to retract my false testimony that I gave before the grand jury, and I want to go in and testify truthfully about what I know, concerning Trump and company and their crimes. So listen, the Sixth Amendment right to counsel is so important, Brian, but it is a Sixth Amendment right to conflict-free counsel, somebody who has the client's interest at heart, not the mob boss's interest at heart.
Well, look, I know that Brian Butler is not an indicted co-conspirator in all of this, but he still was a witness to these crimes. So does the fact that he's coming forward and openly cooperating with prosecutors, does that make it more likely that we'll see other witnesses cooperate against Trump, whether indicted or not?
Usually there's strength in numbers. And when people, start to break from the criminal organization or the criminal conspiracy that is formally indicted, with Trump, Nauta, and De Oliveira being co-conspirators, it often emboldens more people to come forward with the truth. There's safety in numbers. One of the first things I thought of when I saw that Brian Butler decided to go public with evidence that would incriminate Trump and others is I hope he has a security plan in place, because we all know what we will likely see from Donald Trump and how, he will try to inspire his followers, his supporters, to perhaps get after his perceived enemies. We've seen that movie before as well. So, but yeah, to answer your question, often when one person comes forward and breaks from the pack and begins telling the truth about what was going on inside a criminal conspiracy, it does often embolden others to want to, do the same thing, to want to get out there, to want their story told, so they can be on the right side of history. And importantly, Brian Butler said, one of the reasons I came forward was to counter the nonsensical witch hunt claim that Donald Trump keeps spewing into the public square.
Glenn, zooming out a little bit here, what's the status of the Florida trial, and when will we actually know what the trial date might be?
Yeah, great question. There's still a bunch of litigation underway. The last time the case was up in court about a week ago, the parties proposed trial dates. Jack Smith said, how about July 8th? Donald Trump's lawyers, when push came to shove, said, how about August 12th? And for some reason, Judge Cannon at the time said, well, I don't know that these are realistic dates. I'm not sure why that is, particularly when the parties were so close in the proposed trial dates, just virtually a month apart. And what did Judge Cannon do? She set no trial date. So right now, we are all flying blind. We don't know when Judge Cannon will issue a trial date, set a trial date. We don't know when that trial date will be, before or after the November presidential election. We do know that Judge Cannon has been receiving amicus briefs. Troublingly, she's been receiving a number of amicus briefs from some sort of Trump-allied forces who are providing briefs on, how it might be the right thing to do under existing law to just dismiss the indictment against Donald Trump entirely. I don't happen to agree with that proposition, but there have been some ominous signs. Now, listen, judges are allowed, they're entitled, they're authorized under the law to take these sort of helpful briefs from other parties. Ordinarily, judges will try to be even-handed about it, maybe take one or two that are arguing in favor of dismissing a case and one or two in favor of no. There is no reason to dismiss the case, and here is why, based on the existing case law, the precedent. So there have been some ominous signs, but with Judge Cannon, I don't think we have ever been able to sit back comfortably and believe she was doing the right thing in the Trump case for the right reason.
And let's finish off with this. If we do get some type of decision, I know that the Trump team is kind of throwing all the spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks right now. And among that spaghetti is this desperate attempt to actually have this entire classified documents case thrown out, basically. If Judge Cannon were to take the extraordinary step of accepting that request by the Trump team, would Jack Smith then have grounds to like what would his recourse be so that this trial doesn't just fall by the wayside?
Yeah, Brian, I rarely do you hear me say, I hope a judge dismisses an indictment, dismisses a criminal case. That's sort of not in my DNA as a former career prosecutor. But I have to say, if Judge Cannon decided to dismiss this case outright, and I do not believe there would be a legal basis for it, that would give Jack Smith the perfect opportunity to do two things. First and foremost, appeal the dismissal up to the 11th Circuit. And I have a feeling, we would have to see why Judge Cannon decided to dismiss the case, but I can see no lawful basis to dismiss. So that would give the 11th Circuit the opportunity to reverse her, reinstate the case. And the other thing that would do is, I have to believe, that would push Special Counsel Jack Smith over the line to filing a motion to recuse, to have Judge Cannon removed from the case because her impartiality can reasonably be questioned. That's the language of the federal statute that requires a judge to remove himself or herself from a case if their impartiality might reasonably be questioned. So,
well, wouldn't it be moot by that point anyway, if she's already ruled on it, and then doesn't it just go into the appeals process, and then isn't the trial court finished with it at that point?
So if she grants a motion to dismiss the case outright, yeah, the case at that moment is over. But Jack Smith, I'm sure, would immediately appeal it. It would go up to the 11th Circuit. What I think Jack Smith would do is he would file an appeal of Judge Cannon's motion dismissing the case, and then he would say, and in the event the 11th Circuit agrees with the prosecution, rejects Judge Cannon's ruling dismissing the case, reinstates the case, we are also asking that you, 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, order her removed from the case because she has shown that she's just not impartial.
Okay, so it would go back to the trial court just under a different judge.
It would if the appellate court, one, reversed Judge Cannon, reinstated the case, and two, directed that it be remanded to the trial court for a trial and that a new judge replace Judge Cannon. All of this is within the realm of possibilities. Okay,
and as we've spoken about before, that new judge would just pick up exactly where Judge Cannon left off, so the whole process wouldn't start all over again. The judge would just be read in at the point where Judge Cannon was before she made that hypothetical, ridiculous decision, and it would just go from there. So, to your point, all definitely within the realm of possibility. We'll keep an eye on this case as it continues to progress, and to any more developments that we hear on the Brian Butler front as well. So for those watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.
We have some news from within our Fox family. Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have mutually agreed to part ways. Tucker's last show was this past Friday. And starting tonight, Fox News Tonight will air live at 8 p.m. Eastern. It will be an interim show with rotating Fox News personalities until a new host is named. We want to thank Tucker Carlson for his service to the network as a host, and prior to that, as a long-term contributor.
In arguably the biggest news in cable TV, Tucker Carlson is officially out at Fox News. Fox released a statement today saying, "Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways. We thank him for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a contributor. Mr. Carlson's last program was Friday, April 21st. Fox News Tonight will air live at 8 p.m. Eastern, starting this evening as an interim show helmed by rotating Fox News personalities until a new host is named." Now, notably, Tucker was not given a final show, which may or may not suggest that this split was perhaps not as amicable as their statement suggests. What is clear, though, is that Tucker certainly didn't expect his last show on Friday to be his final show, considering this is how his sign-off went.
We just thought, what a great way to end a week. Yeah. Truly, that was a great segment, and I'm just grateful that you came on, and I'm especially grateful for the pie.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Employee of the week, we're just make it of the year, Tyler Morrell of Coco's Pizza. That's it for us for the week. We'll be back. By the way, the entire episode of Let Them Eat Bugs, not quite as good as pizza, streaming now on Fox Nation. Use the promo code ORIGINALS for 30 days free. And we'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, have the best weekend with the ones that you love, and we'll see you then.
So yeah, not exactly the sign-off of a guy who expected that to be his final appearance on Fox. It's also possible, if not likely, that him being given an opportunity to do a final show would be a legal liability for Fox. Fox just settled for $787 million in the Dominion lawsuit, owed in large part to Tucker's own proclivity to lie on air and broadcast others who would lie on air. For example, here's a sampling related to the 2020 election.
With this particular thing that's going on now, I've been all in trying to find the machine fraud, and we found it. We have all the evidence. So what all these outlets that have been calling me from the Washington Post, New York Times, every outlet in the country, they go, Mike Lindell, there's no evidence and he's making fraudulent statements. No, I have the evidence. I dare people to put it on. I dare Dominion to sue me because then it would get out faster.
Tucker's also got his hands in yet another lawsuit that Fox is contending with. Former Tucker Carlson Tonight producer Abby Grossberg is suing the network, citing, quote, vile sexist stereotypes working for his show. She also claimed that Fox lawyers bullied her into protecting the network and its on-air host amid its lawsuit with Dominion, accusing Fox lawyers of deleting text messages from her phone that would have adversely impacted Fox in its litigation. Why? Because, again, they didn't want what they were acknowledging behind the scenes to become public, because it directly undermined what they were saying on air. I'm not sure how many more ways we need to showcase this for Fox's audience to begin to understand that they are being lied to by the people who trust them most. I mean, hell, Tucker himself even admitted that he lies on air.
I mean, I lie. If I'm really cornered or something, I lie. I really try not to. I try never to lie on TV. I just don't, I don't like lying. I certainly do it, out of weakness or whatever.
And of course, while the Dominion case is done and settled, just remember, Fox is still contending with another defamation lawsuit from Smartmatic, this time for $2.7 billion, and Fox is also contending with a lawsuit from its own shareholders, who will have a strong case regarding the fact that Fox violated its fiduciary duty to its shareholders by allowing these conspiracy theorists and liars on the air, including on Tucker Carlson's show. All of which is to say, it's become pretty obvious that Tucker's show, among others, has become a massive financial liability for the company. In fact, it was reported that Fox brought in just $1.2 billion last year, meaning that the network, having lost $787 in just the Dominion lawsuit alone, has resulted in more than half of their total profits gone in one fell swoop. And the upcoming Smartmatic lawsuit, again, is for 33% more than Dominion, not to mention the shareholder lawsuit. I spoke with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner about what that signals for Fox on our YouTube-only legal series, The Legal Breakdown.
It could mean insolvency. I mean, you have to wonder if Fox can weather this financial storm. Think about this. Dominion sued for $1.6 billion. Now, presumably that had something to do with the valuation of Dominion voting systems and the amount of financial damage, including future earning potential, Fox's defamatory lies did to Dominion. Well, you know what? Smartmatic is suing for $2.7 billion. So if you figure Fox had to settle a $1.6 billion lawsuit for nearly $750 million, how much are they going to have to pay out to make the Smartmatic suit go away? And here's the thing. Fox is now operating from a position of extreme weakness, because once they settled with Dominion, Smartmatic is going to be so emboldened to go high, to go hard, and to really wring every last penny out of Fox. So you've got another settlement that is likely in the offing, the Smartmatic suit. You also have shareholder suits being brought by Fox's own shareholders against the Fox Corporation. You've got one of Tucker Carlson's former producers suing Fox. I mean, you really have to ask yourselves, can Fox weather this financial storm?
And this may be more of a financial question than a legal one, but what happens in the instance that Fox has multiples of its own annual revenue just being wiped out with these cases?
Well, I know if it happened to me, I would declare bankruptcy, right? I would just go out of business. I would fold up my tent and try to find some new line of work. So, I am not an accounting expert, and I don't even play one on TV, but it really is an open question whether Fox is going to go belly up, or, whether they have enough in reserve, whether they have enough insurance coverage to kind of weather this financial storm. But here's the thing. This settlement and these suits that are being brought against Fox, I believe, Brian, will only inspire more suits and more suits to be brought. And I would like to think that, this settlement and the others that may come will at least tamp down or deter others from engaging in the kind of blatant democracy-busting lies that the Fox News was in the habit of broadcasting. So I think right now, this is a win in lots of different ways, not only for Dominion, but even if only as a byproduct, it's a win for the American people.
All of which is to say that the legal liability posed by someone like Tucker, who will lie, who will platform liars, who will traffic in unabashed white supremacy, who will advocate for fringe theories like the Great Replacement Theory, may just not have been worth it for a network that's now contending with a whole host of legal and financial issues. And of course that raises the most important question now: what will Tucker do next? Now, this part of the video is purely conjecture, but there are folks saying that he would run for office. And I know that that suggestion is chilling, but remember one thing: while Tucker gets a lot of attention on social media because he's got a big platform and he's a provocateur with no scruples and no shame, he is still an extremist. And what we've learned from Americans more broadly in 2018, 2020, and 2022 is that extremism is not a viable electoral strategy. So I have no idea whether Tucker would ever run for office, and of course, if he did run, we know pretty well by now that anything could happen, but I would caution that Americans don't seem too bullish on electing ultra-wealthy racist liars whose sole goal is to incite a race war. Not exactly the platform that swing voters out there in Wisconsin are looking for. What perhaps is more likely is that Tucker will join another conservative network or even start his own conservative network, leading to a further fracturing of the conservative media ecosystem. And that actually may be more dangerous, considering we already saw how Fox responded to far-right competitors like Newsmax and OAN during the 2020 election by embracing election lies that they knew were false. If Tucker appeared on another network, he would certainly bring some portion of Fox's audience with him, and because Fox's first, second, and third priority is market share, who knows how that network would react in their desperation to retain their audience. All of which is to say, we can't be sure what's going to happen next, but what's clear is that this is the biggest shakeup in the right-wing media ecosystem of the last decade at least. Tucker Carlson losing his platform is unequivocally a good thing, and the danger he posed to this country was unmistakable. What remains to be seen is whether he stays off the air for good, or whether he figures out a new way to cause damage to this country. Before you go, I need your help. I'm right on the cusp of hitting 2 million subscribers, so please help me grow this channel so the progressive media ecosystem grows by hitting the subscribe button right here on the screen. I also started a Spanish channel so we can finally start regaining some of that lost ground among Spanish speakers, so if you want to help support those efforts, you can hit that subscribe button. And finally, if you listen to podcasts and you want to support mine, you'll find a link to that on the screen as well. Thanks so much for watching. According to bombshell new reporting from the Detroit News, which I'll link in the post description of this video, Donald Trump was recorded personally pressuring 2 Republican members of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers in Michigan not to sign the certification of the 2020 election. Also on the November 17, 2020 call was RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel helping Donald Trump pressure Republican Wayne County canvassers Monica Palmer and William Hartman that they would look, quote, terrible if they signed the document certifying the 2020 election. McDaniel told the canvassers, quote, if you can go home tonight, do not sign it. We will get you attorneys. To which Trump added, we'll take care of that. And that's exactly what happened, as both Palmer and Hartman left the canvassers meeting without signing the official statement of votes for Wayne County. The next day, they also tried to rescind their votes in favor of certification, filing legal affidavits claiming that they were pressured. Their attempt to rescind their votes was ultimately unsuccessful. Had they succeeded, they could have threatened the entire statewide certification of Michigan, which of course is what Donald Trump ultimately was seeking to do. According to a Trump campaign spokesman, Trump's actions, quote, were taken in furtherance of his duty as President of the United States to faithfully take care of the laws and ensure election integrity, including investigating the rigged and stolen 2020 presidential election. President Trump and the American people have the constitutional right to free and fair elections, which is true that Trump and the American people have the constitutional right to free and fair elections, but what they don't have the constitutional right to is illegal interference in that election, and that's what Trump, and arguably Ronna McDaniel here, have done. And to that point, the article also notes that Ronna may have legal exposure herself for offering these Republican canvassers something, in this case legal protection, in exchange for them not doing their jobs. According to Chris Thomas, a lawyer who served as Michigan's elections director for more than 3 decades, quote, offering something of value to a public official to not perform a required duty may raise legal issues for a person doing so. In which case, you could add Ronna to the list of other Trump acolytes and lawyers whose lives have been turned upside down as a consequence of this broader election theft scheme. Looking at you especially, Rudy Giuliani. Also, when Trump's campaign spokesman says that Trump's actions were taken in furtherance of his duty as president, give me a break. Nowhere in the presidential oath does it allow for pressuring local election officials not to certify the election results because you want to anoint yourself the winner of an election that you lost. In fact, Trump had the opportunity in court to litigate the claim that fraud occurred, and he didn't win a single case out of the more than 60 cases that took place. Not one. So he might want there to have been fraud, but you don't get to break the law in furtherance of fraud that doesn't exist. And by the way, they tried the same thing in Georgia, and when that special purpose grand jury recommended indictment for Trump, they noted in the special grand jury report, quote, "The grand jury heard extensive testimony on the subject of alleged election fraud from poll workers, investigators, technical experts, and state of Georgia employees and officials, as well as from persons still claiming that such fraud took place. We find by a unanimous vote that no widespread fraud took place in the Georgia 2020 presidential election that could result in overturning that election." In other words, it was so clear that no fraud took place that it was even included in the report so that it was a fact of the case. In Georgia, Trump isn't even allowed to bring up that defense because it's already been so thoroughly debunked. And the same exact thing holds true in Michigan as well as every other state across the country. These claims of fraud are not real. They were nothing more than a predicate to illegally subvert the election results. In fact, we learned from the January 6th committee hearings that Trump was told numerous times by his own White House lawyers and even his own attorney general that there was no fraud in the election, meaning he can't even claim he didn't know the truth because we already have firsthand testimony that he did know, meaning everything he chose to do thereafter had absolutely zero justification. He simply wanted to cheat in the election to illegally retain his grip on power. Here's some of that testimony that blows a hole in Trump's entire defense.
So do you know what the examples of fraud, numbers, names, and supporting evidence was that you sent to Mo Brooks's office? And when I say you, I mean you or the campaign.
There are some very, very general documents as far as say, for example, here are the handful of dead people in several different states. Here are explanations on a couple of the legal challenges as far as saying that the rules were changed in an unconstitutional manner, but it was to say that it was thin is probably an understatement.
My recollection is the president said something like, well, we could get to the bottom. Some people say we could get to the bottom of this if the department sees the machines. It was a typical way of raising a point. And I said, absolutely not. There's no probable cause, and I'm not going to seize any machines. And that was that.
Yeah. Attorney General Barr made a public announcement on December 1st, less than a month after the election, that he had seen no suspended fraud sufficient. Fair to say that by December 1st, you had reached the same conclusion?
It's fair to say that I agree with Attorney General Barr's conclusion on December 1st. Yes, I did, and I supported that conclusion.
I assume, Pat, that you would agree the president is obligated to abide by the rulings of the courts.
Of course.
And I assume you also would...
Everybody is obligated to abide by rulings of the courts.
And I assume you also would agree the president has a particular obligation to take care that the laws be faithfully executed.
That is one of the president's obligations, correct.
I want to start by asking if you agree, Mr. Cipollone, with the conclusions of Matt Morgan and Bill Barr, of all of the individuals who evaluated those claims, that there is no evidence of election fraud sufficient to undermine the outcome in any particular state.
Yes, I agree with that.
Did you believe, Mr. Cipollone, that the president should concede once you made the determination based on the investigations that you credited DOJ did, that the campaign did? Did you, in your mind, form a belief that the president should concede the election loss at a certain point after the election?
Well, again, I was the White House counsel. Some of those decisions are political. So to the extent that, but if your question is, did I believe he should concede the election at a point in time? Yes, I did. I believe Leader McConnell went onto the floor of the Senate, I believe in mid-December, and basically said, the process is done. That would be in line with my thinking on these things.
So again, this idea that Trump wasn't aware that he'd lost flies in the face of clear and definitive testimony from his own White House officials that he'd already been told that there wasn't sufficient fraud to contest the election results. So when he uses that debunked claim as a predicate to then pressure state officials into not certifying the results, he has no legal protection because clearly he knew better. So you can be assured that this will factor into Trump's ongoing prosecutions, and we also may see new litigation surface in Michigan, which would only add to the 91 criminal charges that he's already contending with. As I like to say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.